How can we stay on track with our dietary restrictions when we're away from home? Travel can pose an obstacle for us thyroid thrivers who depend on certain dietary restrictions in order to feel well. For those of us who might be on a healing protocol like AIP or paleo, or those of us who know that foods like gluten, dairy, and sugar trigger our symptoms, travel adds this unwanted layer of stress. Like, here are some really common questions. These are actual questions I've heard from my coaching clients and Thrivers Club members. Ginny, I was doing so well with my food and I was feeling well because of it, but then I had this work trip and everything went out the window. Or how can I stay on track when I'm away from home? Or I have a vacation coming up and I'm worried that I won't be able to stick to my eating plan. Now, let's not forget that vacations, family reunions, and other special events, they're supposed to be fun. And friend, I am here to tell you that while sticking to your dietary restrictions while you're away from home, yes, it can be a perplexing problem and a very common one. It's also a totally solvable one. So, in today's episode, I'm going to help you do just that. We're going to talk about 8 thyroid friendly eating travel tips and strategies. Let's dig in. Hello, Thyroid Thrivers. Welcome back to another episode of Thyroid-Healthy Bites, a weekly podcast dedicated to helping you live well and eat well so you can feel well. I'm Ginny Mahar, your host and the face behind the apron at hypothyroidchef.com. Hello, and welcome back to the show, Thyroid Thrivers. Thank you for joining me today for this really informative conversation about travel and how do we stay on track with our goals when we're away from home. And just to clarify, I think this really can apply to any scenario where we're away from home. Maybe we're going to a special event. Maybe we are taking, a vacation or a business trip or something. Maybe it's just dining out. Maybe it's a weekend with friends. Maybe we got invited to a party. How do we stick to our dietary goals when we're away from home so that we don't end up feeling terrible is basically what it comes down to. I mean, because whether you're gluten-free, dairy-free, paleo, AIP, maybe you're avoiding a personalized list of foods that you're sensitive to, it is possible to stay on track and you can thrive even when you're away from home. It takes a little bit of know-how, a little bit of strategy, and some mindset shifts. But I promise you that with just a little bit of advanced planning, some strategic provisioning, and some practical tips and strategies, we can ditch that unwanted layer of stress that we have around travel when we have dietary restrictions. It doesn't mean abandoning your dietary needs and then paying the price with your well-being. That's what we want to avoid. So in today's show, we're going to talk about why travel can be a challenge for thyroid thrivers. We'll cover why the all or nothing mindset approach does not work. We'll talk about what the mindset of a travel-ready thyroid thriver is like, and then we'll get into those 8 thyroid-friendly travel tips and strategies. Now, before we dig in, I do want to point out that I created a monster blog post on this. So there's all kinds of helpful lists and resources for, travel-friendly recipes, hotel room-friendly meals, snacks, all kinds of stuff in the complete blog post. So all of that is in that post, and I will link to that in the show notes. I'll also just quickly mention here that I have another episode and another blog post on more of the lifestyle aspect of like, how can we support ourselves that way? And it's called my top 10 thyroid healthy travel essentials. It's episode 10 of the Thyroid Healthy Bites podcast. And again, there is also a blog post that goes along with that has all the products listed. So if you've got a trip coming up and you're like, oh, I'm so stoked to, have these resources, there's more where this came from, and just wanted to let you know about those. I will link to all of these, travel resources in the show notes for you. Okay. So let's go ahead and dig in. We'll start with talking about why travel is a challenge for us as thyroid patients. So sticking to our what we call a thyroid healthy eating routine, sticking to that at home, it's easy when you're the one planning and shopping for and preparing the meals. It's easy when you're in your home kitchen. But you take a thyroid driver out of that home environment and whoa, like things get wild really fast. And this is just a human thing. I've been there, done that too many times to count. I still do it occasionally. Like it's just part of the journey. Okay. And we'll get into this in more detail later in the show. But there's this metaphor, and I'm going to date myself here by recollecting this 1980s video game called Pitfall Harry. I don't know if any of you remember Pitfall Harry, but he swung from vines and he would like leap over these, bogs filled with chomping crocodiles. And there were holes that he'd fall into filled with cobras and scorpions, trying to get to the gold, right? Trying to win the game. Now, as a traveling thyroid driver with dietary restrictions, you are like Pitfall Harry. You're dodging all those temptations, the candy bars, the soda, the cookies, the pizza, the donuts, the burgers, this endless gauntlet of inflammatory and highly processed junk food that we are bombarded with away from home. So you're fighting the lure of those fast food chains that call to you from all of our highways. They line our highways. You're swerving around the crappy food options that they serve in most airports. You're fending off those packaged in-flight snack options that, I'm sorry, they only seem to come in two flavors, either sweet gluten or salty gluten. So you've got all these things being thrown at you that you're trying to avoid. And traveling with dietary restrictions, it can make it really feel like running an obstacle course of bad choices and temptations. When we travel, those nutritional needs and restrictions can often go out the window, along with our thyroid healthy lifestyle habits. This isn't just about being disciplined and having willpower and making healthy choices. We're people with special dietary needs. These are legitimate needs that we have to be able to function sometimes, to be able to feel well, to be able to enjoy ourselves. So when we travel, it can make it more challenging and we're more likely to throw caution to the wind. Our restrictions go out the window along with those lifestyle habits. Then you throw on top of that a case of the hangries because maybe you didn't bring snacks with you, and blammo, you're Pitfall Harry, you're sinking into the tar pit. And for us, that tar pit is thyroid, gut, and autoimmune related symptoms. Like game over. You're not having fun. Nobody's having fun on their vacation or their business trip or at their special event or whatever when they feel that way. So let's shift into mindset. Let's kind of go deeper here because I think mindset is always such a good place to start. It really kind of starts there. If we don't get kind of clear on like what a helpful mindset is around this, it can end up taking us a lot longer to get where we want to go with this. So when we're away from home, here's the deal. Even the most disciplined among us is going to be tempted to throw caution to the wind. We're going to be tempted to eat and drink foods that we know aren't right for us. And this is a struggle that seems nearly universal amongst thyroid thrivers. I've experienced it personally. I see it all the time in my health coaching practice and in my Thrivers Club membership. And one of the most common pitfalls I've seen and also have experienced in my own journey is taking this all or nothing approach. Too many times to count, I've been there, not just on vacations, but like with holidays and stuff. I don't want to be the squeaky wheel with dietary restrictions, or someone doesn't want to have to plan ahead for their food needs, or a coaching client doesn't know how to stay on track outside the safety and control of their own kitchen. These are really common things. So if you can relate to that, you're not alone. Even that shift, and I see this a lot, even that shift from weekdays to weekends can throw a lot of people off of their thyroid healthy game. So super common that when we're away from home, we're just going to be more likely to give into foods that we know don't serve us and then pay the price. And we might tell ourselves, I just want to enjoy myself. I just want to eat, I hear this from people. I just want to eat like a quote normal person. Like, look, you're normal. Having needs is normal. That's okay, But whatever it is that we tell ourselves, we're like, I just don't want to deal with these restrictions right now, so I'm not going to. But then the price tag of that aftermath doesn't always equate to those short-lived pleasures. So this really familiar pattern can kind of get established of we go hog wild when we're away from home or on the weekends or on vacation or dining out. And then we pay the price and then we struggle to course correct when we're back to our routine, only to repeat that all or nothing cycle again and again and again and again. And there's no point in being hard on yourself about this. This is just human nature. It's just what we do. It's also part of the learning process, and we'll talk about that a little more too. But the bottom line is just that it's exhausting. We can feel in our bodies like this isn't working, it's bad for me. And it takes energy that we as thyroid patients oftentimes just don't have to sacrifice. Most of you here are hypothyroid for some reason, whether it's Hashimoto's, thyroidectomy, maybe you're, further down the line in your Graves treatment where you've ended up in the hypothyroid camp. Hypothyroidism is a disease of energy. So we just don't have that extra energy to sacrifice. We're doing these things for good reason, to support our ongoing health, to be able to function, to be able to, show up for the people we love and care about, for the purposes and goals and dreams that are important to us. You get to have needs. It is okay to have these needs and to also say, what I've been doing hasn't been working, and I do want to figure out a different way around this. So if you're listening and you're thinking, this is me, I am in this all or nothing cycle, and yeah, Ginny, it's not working. I've established that I'm there. Don't be too hard on yourself, and know that what you've been doing with all of that trial and error is you're actually taking steps closer to a place where you're ready to try something different. You've been moving through the phases of the cycle of change. This is part of the transformation process, is failure, relapse, stumbling, learning the lessons the hard way. It's part of the deal. And I really honestly can't think of one person I've worked with who hasn't gone through some of those things. So if this sounds like you and you do want things to be different, like high five, congratulations, you have arrived at this new stage and level of change where you're ready to take action. So let's harness that readiness today and do it. Let's dig in. What is the mindset we need to have? So let's talk about the mindset of a travel ready thyroid thriver. So let's kind of refresh here by remembering our goal, which, unlike Pitfall Harry, we're not just collecting digital gold or digital points. We are trying to remain functional. We're trying to remain free of what truly can be debilitating symptoms. You are not high maintenance for having needs and for having to establish some healthy boundaries around those needs. So here's the bottom line, is that many of us just plain need, like underline, we need, it's not want, we need to stick to our dietary restrictions. It's not flippant, it's not frivolous, it's not a fad, it doesn't make you high maintenance. This is about your health, okay? What happens when we don't do that, when we don't prioritize that, when we maybe have some things to work through internally, in our own inner dialogue and, our pasts and things around getting to have needs and getting to have boundaries around this. When we abandon those, what can happen? Well, we can end up with autoimmune flares that can leave us face planted on a hotel mattress. We can end up with really bothersome digestive symptoms that can take us by surprise at the most inconvenient times, like at the, business conference you're at, or, the all or nothing approach of throwing those needs out the window the minute you leave home and just discovering over and over, this is not a workable solution. No one enjoys traveling while they're plagued with brain fog, inflammation, bloating, fatigue, skin issues, headaches, digestive issues, all these really common hypothyroid symptoms that can flare up for us, even on medication, when we abandon our dietary needs. So how do we stay on track with our dietary needs, especially those restrictions when we're away from home? Because the reality for most of us is that we do have some dietary restrictions we need to stick with. And this can vary person to person, but most of us do have some, kind of hardline restrictions. And you might have already arrived at the obvious next question. Well, what are my hardline dietary restrictions? This is a really essential question for the traveling thyroid thriver to answer. So let's go ahead and explore that as we dive into the next part of this episode, 8 thyroid-friendly travel tips and strategies. So let's get into the nitty-gritty on how we do this. How can we actually make this workable for us so that we can stick to our dietary needs and goals, even when we're on the road, away from home, staying in a hotel, at a restaurant, at a special event, you name it, just away from home, okay? So number one of the 8 thyroid-friendly travel tips and strategies is define your hard line. This is about what are the foods and drinks you can not get away with. So in other words, what are the foods that you absolutely have to avoid? Gluten is a really common one. For a lot of people, it might be gluten and dairy. Maybe it's gluten, dairy, sugar, and soy. Maybe alcohol's on that list. Maybe for you, something like nightshades are on that list. Or maybe you're having to avoid something like corn or grains. It really depends on the individual in many cases. Your personal hardline is going to vary depending on those individual needs and your current goals. But knowing what your hardline dietary restrictions are just lets you know where to make those healthy boundaries. Like, where do you have to kind of draw a line in the sand and say, look, we need to go to a restaurant that has something for me that I can eat, for example. Okay. So those restrictions are really, they're worth the effort. They're worth planning ahead. They're worth making the call to the host of the event or the hotel or the restaurant. This brings us to tip number 2, which is define your wiggle room. So after defining your dietary hardline, this is also going to help you define your dietary wiggle room. Because in my opinion, travel is really a time to use whatever wiggle room you have. What foods and drinks can you get away with? What are the thresholds for those foods and drinks that you might be able to have in small amounts or in moderate amounts? Knowing that is going to give you as much peace of mind and as much food freedom as possible when you're away from home. So what we find oftentimes is with certain foods, the devil is in the dosage. So for example, maybe you can tolerate like a sprinkling of aged raw milk cheese or a little sprinkling of goat cheese on your salad. Whereas on the other hand, the nachos that have half a pound of melted industrial cheese on top, are going to bloat your belly and make your joints ache. I mean, this one definitely applies to me. And the last time I did something like that, I actually ended up like in the fetal position in bed for like 2 hours, and it wasn't fun. And I was at home. It was a holiday, and I indulged in, it was like fondue or something my son wanted to try. And so I had some and ended up in immense pain temporarily. Sometimes those symptoms they can take days to come on. They can last for days, they can last for weeks. So it just really depends on the individual. But coming back to the point that knowing those thresholds, is part of defining your wiggle room. So just remember that wiggle room is going to vary from person to person, and it can, vary and probably likely will change over time as maybe healing occurs or as new health challenges arise. Maybe as we age, we might come into times like as women coming into, menopausal seasons of life or whatever, we might find we're less resilient. Our needs change. Maybe you've got a gut dysbiosis diagnosis or something like that. Maybe you ended up with SIBO and you've got some special needs around that. Our needs can change over time, but defining your dietary wiggle room, it can entail a lot of experimentation, a lot of flexibility, and some trial and error. And if you slip up and you accidentally do eat something or choose to eat something, choose to throw caution to the wind, don't beat up on yourself. It's such a waste of energy. And the thing about straying from the foods that we know we need to stick to or that we know serve us well is that when we do that, we have this opportunity to observe and build awareness about what happens when I do that. Note your reactions and symptoms. This is part of that change process, and it's part of building awareness and staying in tune with the changing needs of your body. So it's simply You're in the process of defining those boundaries and getting closer to knowing what they are. Now, say you're celiac or something. I mean, say you have a food allergy. I'm not talking about things like that, but if you choose to like have the cheese, even though you know you have a problem with dairy, like see what happens. See what happens and just use that blip on your healing journey to, remake that decision each time to come back to the healing journey. I am going to continue doing the things that I need to do to support my health. I'm going to continue staying committed to the foods that I know I thrive on. I'm not going to let one little blip or mistake or getting, accidentally exposed to something or whatever at a restaurant meal. I'm not going to let that completely derail me from the journey because I know this is just part of the process. We're taking a long-term thrivers approach and looking at this through, a wide angle lens here in the big picture. All right, tip number 3, schedule your travel strategically if you are on a strict dietary protocol. So any thyroid thriver who's been on this journey for a while, in many cases, has spent some time on a special therapeutic dietary protocol, like maybe the autoimmune protocol, maybe paleo, maybe a different type of elimination diet, elimination provocation. There's so many. I mean, even just going gluten and dairy free is, technically like a type of elimination diet. So these templates are often prescribed by functional or holistic physicians or nutritionists as a temporary healing regimen. Oftentimes they're used to heal, repair, and balance the gut, which is an absolutely foundational piece of any thyroid thriver's health puzzle. And I can personally attest that these often restrictive therapeutic healing dietary protocols can work very well for the right person when they're used appropriately. And I've used AIP many times throughout my healing journey. I guess I would describe my current diet as like a personalized paleo approach. But being on a strict healing regimen like that is temporary. That's kind of the key to remember. And while you're on it, it will take some extra care, it will take some extra time, and it will take some extra effort. There's no way around it because here's the thing, they don't serve AIP meals at truck stops or drive-throughs, like they just don't. So one thing that I've provided in that complete blog post are suggestions for preparing for travel while you're on a strict dietary protocol. But what I want to say here is just it is best to schedule, being on one of those healing protocols if you can. If you're working with a healthcare practitioner, of course, consult with them, but try to schedule it when you're not traveling. Give yourself the best chance of success, meaning healing, by choosing wisely when to endeavor upon a strict healing protocol. So what I want you to remember about scheduling your travel strategically if you're on a strict dietary protocol is that these therapeutic diets can carry a really high potential for healing, and there's a good chance it's going to be worth it. The reality is they can also make travel difficult. So just remember that the elimination phase of like a strict elimination diet like AIP, it's meant to be temporary. Ultimately, they can help you heal enough that maybe you have more food freedom next time you travel. But if you're currently on one of those protocols or getting ready to go on one, I do recommend you try to give yourself the best chance to succeed by either postponing your travel if you can, or planning your meals ahead of time. And know that your food choices will get easier and less limited with time and healing. Hey, Thyroid Thrivers, Jenny here. I just want to pop in with a quick message that if you're listening to today's show and thinking, I'm ready to learn more about this thyroid healing journey, about what foods to eat, what foods to avoid, one of the best ways to do it is to sign up for my free thyroid-friendly grocery guide. This features over 130 delicious, colorful, nutrient-dense foods we can eat. So this list is gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, refined sugar-free, and free of processed foods. Because there can be a lot of emphasis, especially when we're starting out, on all that we can't have and all that we're supposed to avoid. But really, the purpose of thyroid-friendly eating is to incorporate more of the good stuff. So to grab your copy instantly of the Thyroid Friendly Grocery Guide, you can go to hypothyroidchef.com/grocery. I'll send you the guide and you'll also get put on my free weekly newsletter. So you'll get fresh recipes, you'll get updates on the podcast, you'll get personal notes from me, special discounts, and all kinds of goodies that I send out to my mailing list for free just once a week. So go ahead and grab that at hypothyroidchef.com/grocery. Okay, back to the show. Okay, thyroid-friendly travel strategy number 4 is plan ahead. So it's a great idea to stock up on some travel-friendly items from the lists that are included in the complete blog post for this episode. Some of these foods are packaged, and one pitfall we want to avoid is going, so I can just eat that instead of making a home-cooked meal. That's really not the point of thyroid healthy eating. The point and the goal of thyroid healthy eating is to be preparing whole food meals from fresh ingredients. It's just that that isn't always realistic. It isn't always realistic for those of us who want to travel and go have adventures and experiences and take road trips and be away from home, where we might be out of the control of that kitchen. So we've got to find solutions for that. And that, I think, is where some of these packaged foods can really be helpful. You can choose from some of the travel-friendly items that I've included on the list in the complete blog post. I think snacks are they're great in a pinch and they're great on travel days. And you'll find a lot of different options to choose from on that list. Just a few different, things off the top of my head, like things like grass-fed beef jerky or beef sticks. There's some ideas for travel-friendly fruits and vegetables, like dehydrated veggie chips and things like that, all kinds of different, nuts and snacks, and just ideas to get your wheels turning about, what are some kind of more healthy, whole food packaged snacks that don't need to be refrigerated, stuff I can throw in my backpack, throw in my travel bag, toss in the car to keep me away from getting the hangries. If you need something more substantial, you can bring a few simple meals that you can prepare while you're staying somewhere that has a kitchen or even a microwave and a mini fridge, like a lot of hotel rooms have. So I've also included a list of quick and easy travel-friendly meal ideas in the complete blog post. If you need to provision at your destination, you can look up the local grocery stores and see maybe there's like a Whole Foods you can stop at, or even a regular grocery store, stop at on the way to your accommodations. And I've put together like a really simple 10-minute pit stop grocery list for when you're traveling to just grab some staples so you have something you can eat. If you're on a strict healing protocol and you do have to travel, you are going to need to plan ahead, like we talked about. So say you're doing AIP, preparing a few AIP meals in advance that you can freeze, throw them into a cooler, call ahead, make sure your hotel or whatever accommodations has a mini fridge, a microwave, something maybe available to store your food and reheat your food. You can call the hotel or restaurants ahead that you'll be dining at. You can tell them about your dietary restrictions. Anything you can do in advance is going to make your trip less stressful and less disruptive to your healing. In addition to all those other lists I already shared, one other list that's I told you guys, this is a monster blog post. One other list I put in there is a list of like AIP friendly recipes that are make ahead and freezer friendly for these times when you do, maybe because it happens, it's happened to me certainly, where an unforeseen, trip or whatever comes up and I'm on AIP and I know I'm just going to need to prepare some things in advance to have with me. And it sounds like a lot of extra work, but when you do it, it is such a stress buster. It's just like, I know I can stick to my goals. I know I can stick to the healing that I'm trying to do with this. And I've planned ahead and I've got, some options here that are doable, travel friendly, and are going to enable me to, stick to my goals. Okay, number 5 of our thyroid-friendly travel tips and strategies is to stay fed. And this is about avoiding the hangries, right? Because There's nothing worse than getting hungry and having nothing to eat. Like that is just an absolute surefire way that you're going to fall face first into something that probably isn't good for you. Whether that's the continental breakfast buffet at the hotel, the bagels and muffins from the coffee kiosk, the waffles, the danishes, it's like you get out into the world and you start to realize like, oh my gosh, I am surrounded by gluten and dairy. And the lists of foods that I included for like some of those packaged snacks and things, they might not be ideal as dietary staples. We don't want to be leaning on packaged snacks instead of healthy, whole food, scratch-made meals. They can provide something to keep you satisfied, even if you're on a plane, train, or automobile. So you'll find a list of 20 of those thyroid-friendly travel snacks at the end of the complete blog post. Now, if you're attending an event and you're unsure that there's going to be food available that meets your dietary needs, one just like simple hack that I've used hundreds of times is just eat a little something ahead of time. It's just going to take the edge off. And it's like kind of like that adage about don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry. You're just going to make better decisions if you're not ravenous. When you eat something before that event or even before a dining experience, if you're in that situation where you're like, I just don't know what I'm getting into here, you're just not going to feel so deprived or desperately hungry that you end up choosing foods that aren't right for you. Tip number 6, call ahead and ask. Okay. And in parentheses on the blog post, I put just do it because I know I can feel you thinking, I'm not doing that. I'm not calling ahead and asking. I don't want to do that. Like that makes a lot of us squirm. But we don't necessarily have to start with calling ahead and asking. Let's kind of back this up. So this mostly applies to like restaurants and events and things like that. So say you're dining out. What you can do is go to the restaurant's website ahead of time, look at the menu, look it over, try to figure out what can I have on here. A lot of times I find maybe 2, 3 things I can have. Some places are just a little bit more accommodating to dietary restrictions than others. So check out the menu. You might be surprised and you might find something on there that you can eat, and then you have a plan. And having that plan is going to help you avoid being lured off track by temptation, especially when you're hungry. Because I think we've all been in that situation where you show up at the restaurant, your tummy's growling, you look at the menu and you're like, there's all these things on here that I can't have. I can feel my anxiety going up, and now what am I going to do? And I just end up eating something that I know I'm going to pay for later. So looking at the menu ahead of time is just a really simple, doable hack where you don't have to pick up the phone and talk to somebody or make any special requests, right? You can just check the menu and you might find something, or at least kind of have a plan for like, a lot of times I'll say, oh, maybe I could order that like maybe if I get that without the bun, like the burger without the bun, or I have like a plan for what I can order. Huge stress reliever, and is also going to help you stay on track. It's also going to alert you if the restaurant does not have any options that work for your current dietary needs. So if there's nothing on the menu that works for your dietary restrictions, you've got a couple options. You can either try to find a different restaurant that does, or you can call ahead and ask. Just ask, is there something the kitchen might be able to prepare for me? I have dietary needs. I do recommend having some suggestions in mind, especially if you're on a very restrictive protocol. And I say this as someone who has worked many years as a restaurant chef. Restaurants get these calls all the time. It is not out of the ordinary. People have dietary restrictions for, serious health issues. People have life-threatening food allergies that they need to call ahead and say, hey, I need to make sure I'm not going to keel over at the meal because there's peanuts on my salad or something like that. So it is totally not out of the ordinary, and it is okay to make these special requests. Here's what I recommend as a former restaurant chef. Try to have some suggestions in mind, especially if you're on a really restrictive protocol, because chances are the chef might not know what the autoimmune protocol is or what low FODMAP is, or whatever your needs are. But they probably know how to, say, prepare a grilled steak or a piece of fish and a side of veggies using only olive oil and salt. Like, there's an AIP meal, okay? And that is a recipe that can fit on a sticky note on the chef's hot station, okay? Some of us don't want to do that. I know it makes a lot of us squirm. I am one of those people. And it can be hard to make those special requests, but this is like a really good personal growth opportunity and a really good like internal conversation that is important for us to have with ourselves about our own self-worth. You get to have needs. You get to have needs. It doesn't make you a bad person to have special requests. You're just looking out for yourself like you would look out for other people. Give yourself that same level of care and attention and protection in just picking up the phone. Just pick up the phone and do it. Now, again, as a chef, one thing I can tell you is when those requests are made clearly and when they're made ahead of time, okay, underline that, ahead of time, they're a lot more appreciated than like these wishy-washy, I don't know, there's nothing on the menu I can eat, and can the chef, and it's the middle of a really busy dinner service, which is chaos at a busy restaurant. So you're going to have a lot better luck if you call ahead of time, talk to the chef, maybe like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. before the big dinner service starts. They'll have a plan. You just tell the server, hey, I talked to the chef earlier. Nobody has to stress about it. Not you, not the server, not the back of the house. But yeah, just do try to be, I think, clear and concise when you're making those special requests. Like, here's what not to do. Don't give them your entire health history. Don't rattle off 35 foods that aren't allowed on your elimination diet. Like, it's a super busy, high pressure job to be a chef. Like, they don't have time for that and it's going to be overwhelming. So just maybe offer some ideas for a very simple prepared meal that does work for you. So what I want you to remember about this tip to call ahead and ask, like, just do it, is that your health is important. You get to have needs. And you might be surprised to learn that people are typically very understanding and accommodating when you're clear about those needs and when you give some advance notice. It's going to be better for everyone if you speak up for your needs ahead of time versus, say, showing up at your friend's party, looking at what's being served for dinner and saying, yeah, I can't eat any of this. That's not a situation anybody wants to be in, especially not you, not the host. So just don't be afraid to ask, okay? Tip number 7, lean on those thyroid healthy lifestyle habits. This isn't just about food. Travel is not the time to forget your lifestyle, your thyroid-friendly lifestyle habits, your medications and supplements, your bedtime, your physical activity, your water bottle, your clean beauty products, your stress management practices. Those lifestyle habits are what's going to support and buffer you through the road bumps that travel can bring. They can help keep you on the up during your trip rather than down in the dumps that are brought on by that all or nothing overindulgence. So if you want some more ideas on those non-food related lifestyle items to bring with you when you're traveling, you can check out my list of thyroid healthy travel essentials. I'll link to that blog post in the show notes, as well as the corresponding episode of Thyroid Healthy Bites. That's episode number 10, my Thyroid Healthy Travel Essentials. And it's just a list of the things that I never leave home without. Okay, last but not least on our list of thyroid-friendly travel tips and strategies, tip number 8, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Don't let perfectionism get in the way of your progress as a thyroid thriver. Getting the hang of traveling with dietary restrictions isn't going to happen overnight, but it can happen over time. As long as you have a long-term mindset and you stay committed to your healing journey, you will get there. Even if you stumble, even if you make mistakes along the way, even if you go completely off the rails, you can still get there. Traveling as a thyroid thriver with dietary restrictions is a lot easier If you can also relax and just allow yourself to go with what's good enough when that's available to you and when it's necessary. So I'm not talking about, those hardline food restrictions or food sensitivities, and especially not those food allergies, but in those places where you maybe have some wiggle room. Okay, so here's an example, like grass-fed steak is the ideal. It's full of anti-inflammatory fats. It's like basically considered a health food versus industrial feedlot beef is considered an inflammatory, kind of unhealthy food. Well, when you're away from home and you're far from access to those options, maybe you're at a place that doesn't serve grass-fed beef, maybe a regular steak can be good enough. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And just kind of breathe through it, because like expecting ourselves to eat perfectly all the time is just a huge source of unnecessary stress. Like you get to have some flexibility in this wherever you can find it. And especially when we're traveling, right? We want to take advantage of that wiggle room and we want to enjoy ourselves, and we don't want to feel anxiety about food. That's what a lot of this is about. Because when we're anxious, we're not digesting well. When we're anxious, we're less resilient. When we're stressed out, we're less likely to get the nutrients we need from our food. So when you're far from home and you're far from access to those quote ideal options, maybe some things can be good enough. So just take a breath, take some pictures, smell the roses, watch the sunset. Travel is meant to be enjoyed. And when we stress about every single ingredient and eating only ideal foods, that can be actually quite a bit worse for us than, say, a little bit of conventional produce at the restaurant, or consuming a little bit of refined oil or a little bit of refined sugar, of course, depending on your personal needs. But those things for a lot of us probably aren't going to throw us for a humongous loop if it's just something that happens once in a while so that we can enjoy ourselves and travel and have adventures and leave the house. These are important things for our well-being. If you're committed to this journey, it's probably not how you eat all the time. Probably the vast majority of the time you are at home, you are, packing in those nutrients, you are getting really good quality ingredients and making home cooked meals. So just however you can, and as your health circumstances allow, and of course, work with your doctor or other healthcare practitioners on this, but as much as you can, do try to relax and enjoy those travel and dining experiences away from home. Here's what I want you to remember about not letting perfect be the enemy of good enough. Know your dietary hard lines, know your dietary wiggle room, and use them. The more restrictions you currently have, the more you're probably going to have to kind of wear your game face and plan ahead. If you are in a place with your healing where you can, say, get away with the dessert or the glass of wine or the goat cheese crumbles on the salad, do it. Life is meant to be lived. Most importantly, try to enjoy yourself. Enjoy your trip, enjoy your travels, enjoy being somewhere new and experiencing new flavors and new scenery and new experiences. That's what life is about. And just because you have thyroid issues or dietary restrictions does not mean you have to miss out on those things. So once again, the complete blog post for this features bunches of lists of thyroid-friendly travel snacks and meal ideas. So I'll give you just kind of a list of what's included. First, there's a list of 20 thyroid-friendly travel snacks. So some of these are packaged, some of these are just like travel-friendly produce items and things like that. Some of my favorite products, just looking at a few things on the list, like Epic Bison bars or sprouted pumpkin seeds, or my favorite nut butter, or some of my favorite dehydrated like veggie chips, some of my favorite grain-free crackers and things like that. I've also got a quick sample grocery list for when you arrive at your destination. So this is like a 10-minute pit stop for provisions. So just grabbing a few things so that, when you wake up in the morning, you've got whatever you want, for your coffee, maybe something to eat, like a very simple breakfast option, some simple snack options. You've got things to keep those hangries at bay so that you don't end up in this situation where you're like, there is nothing around me that works for me that I can eat. So again, a very quick sample grocery list for when you arrive at your destination. I've also included 5 quick and easy travel-friendly meal ideas because a meal doesn't have to be fancy to fill you up or to be enjoyable. And it feels a lot better knowing that you're not abandoning your dietary needs or that you're not risking these food-related symptoms or autoimmune flares. So I put together a few simple meal ideas for you that can be prepared in a hotel room with a mini fridge and a microwave. And you don't need any special kitchen equipment or anything like that. So just some really simple meal ideas. And then for those of you who may have to travel while you're on a therapeutic elimination diet, like the autoimmune protocol or the elimination provocation or the functional medicine elimination diet or any one of those protocols, I included a list of freezer-friendly, elimination diet-friendly meal options that you can make in advance. So these are just some of my like hypothyroid chef recipes that are make ahead and freezer-friendly so that you can do that and set yourself up for success. So to wrap it up today, like most aspects of thyroid healthy living and eating, the answers to the travel conundrum, they're not quick, they're not easy, and they're not one size fits all. But it is a really simple philosophy. We just stay committed to the journey. So when we commit to a thyroid healthy lifestyle, adopting a long-term mindset, taking that wide angle lens on our healing journey, we can make travel an enjoyable experience that also supports our health needs and goals. As thyroid thrivers, it's those small but mighty steps that are going to get us where we want to go on our healing journey. They're going to lead us to a place where we know how to enjoy, relax, and stay thyroid healthy, even when we're away from home. It's part of the journey. It's a tricky part of the journey, but it is one that we absolutely do figure out with time and experience. I want to really reassure you of that. And I hope that the tips I've shared with you today have helped you, believe in that, in the possibility that I can still travel. I can still live my life. I'm not going to give up on those things. Please, please don't do that. You deserve to live a full life. So let's troubleshoot this. Let's problem solve and let's use some of these strategies to set you up so that you can enjoy these things without abandoning your health goals. And you know what? It's probably not going to be perfect. You're probably not going to nail it the first time, but every step is part of the process. And every step is what gets you closer to where you want to be. Even those stumbles, even those mistakes, even those choices to, oh, I just threw caution to the wind and ate something I knew was bad for me and paid the price. Even those things are part of the process of change and transformation and figuring this out. Our strategies in travel scenarios are probably not going to be the same as those that we implement at home. Like maybe we're going to rely a little bit more on having some packaged snacks in our bags so that we know we're not going to get hangry. But even so, they can be sustainable and they can enable us to thrive and enjoy ourselves. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, friend. I promise you that. Thriving and enjoying yourself does not have to be mutually exclusive. So I hope this episode has given you some yummy ideas and some practical solutions for your next business trip, your next vacation, or whatever other away from home adventure you have planned. These experiences are a really important part of life. They're part of your freedom to live and enjoy your life. And that's so important. And just know that you can find peace and you can find solutions that are going to serve you around food and travel. Believe that you can get there. And if you just stay the course, you will figure it out. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And if you need help along the way, I am here for you. You can always work with me one-on-one. You can join us in the Thrivers Club and start learning and applying these things with, a huge supportive community of other thyroid thrivers who are on this same shared path, dealing with these same shared issues. Don't forget, you can find oodles of thyroid-friendly snack ideas, meal ideas, grocery lists, all kinds of troubleshooting tips and resources in that complete blog post for this episode. I've linked to that in the show notes for you. So go ahead and check that out if you want to get to some of those, product ideas and recipe ideas. If you've enjoyed the show, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. I always love hearing from you, and I appreciate you taking the time to support the show that way. It truly does make a really huge difference. So thank you in advance for doing that. I'm Ginny Mahar, your thyroid health and cooking coach, wishing you happy cooking, happy thriving, happy travels, and the best of health. See you next time.